People love to say, why don't you just leave? What, like leaving makes the abuse stop? Anyone who has lived through an abusive relationship knows the truth. Leaving doesn't end the abuse, it changes the form. And sometimes post separation abuse is the most dangerous stage of all. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And to honor that, I'm doing this series, The 8 Types of Abuse. And I'm breaking down the patterns of abuse that women live through and not just the surface level stuff that people recognize. Because abuse doesn't stop when you leave, it often escalates. I'm Lisa Sonni. I'm a toxic and abusive relationship expert, certified relationship coach, and author. And I help women break trauma bonds, leave abusive men, and rebuild their lives. So if you've ever felt like leaving didn't bring you the peace that you expected, the peace that everybody said you would have, this episode is for you. And hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the series where I have been breaking down domestic violence in some of the most covert ways. So let's talk about post-separation abuse, what it really looks like, how it shows up, and why so many women say leaving was just the beginning of the next massive battle. You should probably send this to like at least 5 of your friends or family who just don't get it. When you finally leave, you've actually done the hardest thing imaginable, right? You've broken that daily cycle. You've taken that terrifying first step. And people around you think, great, it's over now. But for abusive men, separation is the ultimate loss of control. And when control is what they've built their identity on, they don't just let it go. They escalate. And that's why post-separation abuse is so brutal. It's about punishing you for leaving, reasserting dominance from a distance, and keeping you trapped in fear when you are no longer under the same roof. And if you share children, co-parenting is the new battlefield. He might withhold the kids, show up late, leave them sitting on the porch waiting. Cliche, but it happens all the time. He cancels plans at the last second, or he just refuses to follow family court orders. He badmouths you, right? Mom's crazy. Mom doesn't care about you. Mom broke up the family. Or he spoils them with gifts to buy their loyalty or guilt trips them into rejecting you. He might even neglect them on purpose, right? Like skipping meals, leaving them unsupervised, exposing them to unsafe people just to make you panic and look like you're some crazy overprotective parent. Some of these men are like, car seat? Don't be ridiculous. He's 5. He doesn't even need one. And others use custody as blackmail, right? If you start dating again, I will take the kids away. If you don't do what I say, you will never see them again. One client actually told me that her ex would drop their kid off late every single Monday morning, but it was only like 5 or 10 minutes, right? And I know to an outsider, it's like, not a big deal. It's only a few minutes. To her, it meant being late for work every single week and being written up by her boss. He picked the drop-off time on purpose. Another woman said that her ex would show up at their daughter's soccer game. He would sit right behind her and he would whisper in her ear, "You'll regret leaving me. No man will ever come near my kids." The child was on the field, right? Totally oblivious while she sits there frozen in fear. And if she moved seats, he moved too. Then there's harassment, the endless texts and calls and emails. Sometimes it's rage, right? You'll regret this. And sometimes it's begging. I miss you. I'll change. I promise. Sometimes it's baiting. If you really cared about the kids, you'd answer me. You're not child focused. It doesn't really matter how you respond, right? If you ignore him, he escalates. If you reply, he twists your words. You block him, he finds another number. These guys will Venmo you $1 just to send a message or change the Netflix name to call me. It is not communication. It is psychological warfare. And then there's showing up where you are, right? Sitting outside your house, pacing on the driveway, following you on the road, accidentally bumping into you at the grocery store or your workplace. It's not a coincidence. It's stalking. I've actually got a podcast episode with former law enforcement officer Mark Wynn where we go into detail about this in my Real Talk with Lisa Sonni Relationships Uncensored playlist. One of the things we talk about there is the entitlement, right? If she would just answer, then I wouldn't have to show up. He feels like he needs to do this. This is his right. And it doesn't just stop in the real world, right? Cyber stalking is just as common. Fake accounts watching your social media, whether it's him, his mom, the new supply, harassing your friends online, flooding your inbox with threats or with love bombing. Some of them even hack into email accounts or track your phone. One woman actually told me that her ex would leave flowers for her on her front porch after she blocked him on everything. A neighbor was like, "Oh, it's so sweet." To her, she got the message, right? I know where you live and I can get to you anytime. Every appearance, every coincidence, it's a reminder I still have access to you. I've had clients whose ex tried to run them off the road, plural, and took a baseball bat to the home security system. This is not uncommon. For so many women, the courts actually become another weapon, right? He drags you into endless hearings and filing motions, and not to win, but to just drain your energy, your money, and your time. He fights for custody, not because he wants the kids, because he wants control. He hides assets. He refuses to pay support. He suddenly quits to avoid responsibility. He paints himself as this stable parent and he calls you unstable. And judges and mediators and lawyers and parenting coordinators, they only see the calm. They see this collected version of him. Meanwhile, you're left bankrupt, exhausted, doubting yourself, spinning in circles. And to the whole system, I know that it looks like two people who just can't get along, but you know that it's not conflict, it's control. And money is one of the most common tools that abusers use after separation, right? He refuses to pay child support, but he also refuses to spend any time with the kids. Or he pays late and inconsistently, so you can never plan ahead. And there's $1.13 billion in outstanding support owed right now in the United States. He might dump shared debts on you, ruin your credit, sabotage your job by harassing you at work or spreading lies to your coworkers. Sometimes it's outright abandonment, right? He walks away, leaves you scrambling. You have to cover everything else alone, childcare, money, all of it. And sometimes it's much more subtle, right? He drags his feet on his obligations. He knows you'll spend more enforcing it than you'll ever recover. Then there are the threats, not always shouted, right? Some are whispered or implied or just delivered with kind of a calm smile. If you ever bring another man around my kids, I'll take his life. No judge will ever believe you. You'll lose everything. You'll never be free of me. I'll ruin you. Sometimes he even threatens himself, right? If you leave me, I'll take my own life and it'll be your fault. That's not vulnerability. That's control. And women take these threats seriously because they know what he's capable of. It's not paranoia, it's survival. And some men put this in writing, but the truth is most don't. So you can't even get the police to help. Abusive men know how to stay under the radar. And not all post-separation abuse actually looks like harassment. Sometimes it's neglect. He stops showing up for the kids. He doesn't even provide the basics when they're with him, disappears for weeks, resurfaces like nothing happened. And others might think, at least he's gone, at least he's not bothering you. But that abandonment forces you to do everything financially, emotionally, logistically. And then people are like, well, you had these kids. Yeah, we had these kids, actually. Maybe she didn't sign up to do it alone. So when you point all of this out, he plays the victim and he says some crap like, she won't even let me see the kids. That tale is as old as time. And then there's the emotional cost that people don't even see. The exhaustion of juggling lawyers and jobs and kids, all while he keeps you in survival mode. The shame of having to explain to schools or bosses or friends why he keeps popping up. The isolation of when people say, aren't you over it yet? Over what? It's still happening. It's not the past. Tell me how you get over something that you are still living, right? The way that you're forced to live half in the present and half in hypervigilance, scanning for his next ambush. Sometimes post-separation abuse is actually so bad that women go back. And trust me, it is not because they want to. It's not because they think he'll change. But somehow it's like, at least inside the relationship, maybe the abuse was kind of predictable. Like you could anticipate it, manage it, you could keep the peace. On the outside, it's like 24/7 chaos and there's no way to contain it because you don't know. That's why some women struggle to go no contact, because if they're in contact, they feel like they can manage it better. There's still a sense of control for the victim. And I mean control over themselves and their own safety. I had a client tell me, I left, but it was so relentless that going back was the only way I could breathe. That doesn't mean that leaving was wrong, right? It means that he's proving exactly who he always was, right? He's a man who refuses to let go of control. So all this to say, is leaving worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know it sounds grim. Honestly, this is why I don't talk about this very often, because people hear post separation abuse gets worse. And I realize, like, who would leave if everything gets worse? What kind of pitch is this to leave if things get worse? Leaving can make it worse before it gets better. But we need to be honest. Women are at the highest risk of being killed by an abusive partner in the weeks and months right after leaving. And I don't say that to scare you. It's to validate that if you felt unsafe after leaving, you weren't imagining it. It's real. That's why safety planning matters so much, and why support networks matter, and why people say, tell your neighbors and tell the people around you. It's why just leave is one of the most harmful and frankly stupid things that people say. My take on it is the majority of people know they need to leave. It's not just leave. It's complicated, it's dangerous, and it costs a lot of money. It costs you so many things, potentially your life. So why does she stay? This entire video is why. And we haven't even gotten to the part about how trauma bonds play right into this. Because when he's harassing you, threatening you, dragging you to court, part of you still remembers all of the good moments, the apologies, the times he promised to change. So even when you know it's abuse, you might catch yourself still wondering, would it be easier if I just went back? And that's the hook that he keeps using even after you've left. So if you've left and you're facing this kind of abuse, the problem isn't you. You didn't make it worse by leaving. You revealed the truth about him by leaving. This is evidence that this was the right decision. Post-separation abuse just proves what you always knew. It was never about love. It was always about power. And if you're still in the relationship and you're hearing this and you're terrified of what might happen if you leave, leaving is a personal choice. Nobody gets to dictate when or how you do it. And if you're not ready yet, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. This is part 6 of my series, The 8 Types of Abuse. We've already covered physical and sexual, psychological, verbal, financial abuse. Today we talked about post-separation abuse. And in the next episode, we are going to tackle one of the most misunderstood terms in this space, reactive abuse. I call it a reactive response. People call it reactive abuse, but I want to explain in that video why that language is just wrong and what it really means when you snap under his pressure. So subscribe so you don't miss it. Share this video with somebody who needs to know that leaving doesn't make the abuse stop, but it does make the freedom possible.